disappeared for a little and I couldn't do the one video a month thing. My bad. There's a bunch of other games I wanted to cover that included Doom the Dark Ages, Expedition 33, and of course, Uma Musume. Hey Bloober team, you've announced that you're working on Silent Hill 1 Remake, and I do want to say thank you for doing that despite you teasing at Silent Hill 3 and giving me a heart attack in the process. Obviously, working on Silent Hill 3 without the existence of Silent Hill 1 would just diminish the weight of the story of Silent Hill 3, and would have been a severe misstep in reviving Silent Hill as a franchise. Your role towards bringing back Silent Hill is a pretty difficult one, and I'm not a game developer, so I can't say that everything that I say will be flawless towards bringing back Silent Hill into the spotlight as the psychological horror game icon it was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Speaking of the early 2000s, just look at the rate we're getting Silent Hill content. The series had been dormant for over a decade before Silent Hill 2 Remake, and Silent Hill The Short Message, and now we're getting Silent Hill F within a year of the launch of Silent Hill 2 Remake. Me being a wannabe video essayist just had to come out with a Silent Hill video to complete the whole starter package and complete some ritual, I don't know. The remake of Silent Hill 2 has successfully brought the franchise back in the spotlight as the horror franchise to pay attention to, and with Silent Hill F coming really soon, which I was a lot more excited about than the remake, I'm glad the project has drawn eyes to the game. Seeing as it's a completely new entry, this would give Silent Hill F a bigger chance to succeed financially as well. I've played primarily across all the Team Silent games, so my perspective might be too skewed towards the older games, but I can't really help that if you're working on a remake. Ultimately, that's where my reference point is going to be, and this video might act as a pseudo-review of the Silent Hill 2 remake, but again, the purpose of this is to at least make what I want out of Silent Hill 1 remake available for the public to see, and I'm honestly not even sure that it'll reach anyone at Bloober to begin with, but you know, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So hopefully I don't have any terrible takes that are gonna age like milk in the future. Horror games are my absolute favorite when it comes to video games, and you might see that given the track record of stuff that I uploaded. Or it could be Fortnite because of all of these. The pace they usually take and the visions that many directors have for them are consistently fun, and sometimes you'll see something revolutionary every once in a while. The remake does a bunch of things pretty well, and from the second your eyes process anything, you will know that this is a really stinking good looking game. From the first scene where James is in the bathroom, the way he washes his hands and how his skin moves on his hands, and the way that pressure from his thumbs kind of affects the flesh in his palm, moving around, it's absurdly good, and it marks a level of character model fidelity that could arguably match Red Dead Redemption 2's. It's really nice to see this much detail go towards character models, and Silent Hill has always given this much attention to them. You'll see this especially in Silent Hill 3 and 4. The characters' faces are really meticulously animated, and my friends who have never played the games and watched me stream it made note of that. We were really in awe at the fact that this was a PlayStation 2 game. Like, we consciously knew it, but it's always really nice to see developers make full use of the power of the system. We've been really spoiled on the front of games looking good, and it's now been made a lot easier to make games look nice with stock assets and the imaging technologies that we have today. But sometimes there's a lack of care placed in these games that just makes the visuals look AI generated. The biggest example I can think of right now is The First Descendant. The games didn't just want to look good, they wanted to present something, and an incredible amount of effort was put towards making the art style really speak out, if you know what I'm saying here. There is almost the revival of a tradition with the way that these cutscenes are executed, so I really appreciate them. Basically, art style over graphics any day of the week. The second element is the environment itself, which has been really well crafted, and seeing different locations recreated was pretty refreshing to see. Additionally, the order of how you explore and progress through the story has been changed up, almost in the same way Resident Evil 2 Remake did, where rather than exploring the east wing of the police station first, you would go into the west wing. The return of Akira Yamaoka as the lead composer was great to hear, as he basically remakes the whole soundtrack from scratch, I think. A lot of riffs and tunes have been rearranged with a slight twist on the tracks to suit the nature of the remake. You'll be hearing that throughout the video, but my god, I still don't know how to match the tone to play along with it more accurately. The sound design of this game is really well done, with how the audio comes from the environment, and it enhances tension for the player while keeping them engaged with everything happening on their screen. I won't be discussing the plot details of the story, as that would force going into spoilers, and there's like a million video essays on YouTube that go through interpretations of the story over like the last over 2 decades at this point. Some people might go, this game is like 24 years old, man, who cares if you spoil it? I mean, yeah, but the game just got re-released and remade, and now people have a chance to experience it, so I might as well just, you know, not discuss the plot here. The main focus of the video would be on what I experienced as a longtime fan of the series, and what that experience makes me want out of the upcoming Silent Hill 1 remake. First off, I want to speak on things from a technical perspective, and that's going to take us back to Silent Hill 2 as the reference point, because the game was an Unreal Engine 5 mess on launch. If you want to make Silent Hill accessible to everyone, by all means go ahead, but a lot of people I know would have trouble trying to run this game, and upgrading GPUs and laptops is so stinking expensive in general. Honestly, the reason that pushed me towards upgrading to a PC from a gaming laptop was because I wanted to play Alan Wake 2. It's a move that was eventually going to be made, but it's honestly unfortunate that I kind of fell into that trap, because it gets worse and worse with almost every other title. Recently, we've had Indiana Jones The Great Circle, and Doom The Dark Ages very unfortunately is a part of this. There's even a visual flaw where the game doesn't renderize if you don't have over 6 GB of VRAM, alongside a weird refraction effect that can be seen sometimes. I haven't managed to capture that because, you know, the system I experienced this with isn't here, but trust me on this, it had issues. Doom The Dark Ages technical issues on systems from 2020 to 2021 are remarkably disappointing, and this new trend where games can basically void your system really quickly if you're not dropping an astronomical amount of money to keep up with what developers want you to have, all because they're sponsored by Nvidia, since the game has practically no lighting of its own and relies on ray tracing to actually allow you to see. You'll see this especially with handheld devices, because I couldn't see a thing while I was trying to play it on the Legion Go. Additionally, handhelds are really neglected, and Doom Eternal was pretty well optimized for those. This shows a lot of neglect from developers towards players, and I would go as far as saying disrespect for the time and money of the player who might have paid full price for the game just out of loyalty or enthusiasm for the project. Man. Going back to Silent Hill 2 Remake, this game has had performance issues on a bunch of levels, and this was seen by my setup with a i7 14th gen and a 4070. So it's a pretty, you know, well upgraded system, and I still had issues. These issues persisted throughout a variety of setups that would also include laptops that my friends had, and we streamed the game to each other, so it was a shared experience at this point, where we knew that the game just wasn't running that great initially. We've had issues relating to ghosting due to the upscaling that was being used in the game, so this was shown through hair, leaves, reflections, especially with FSR and DLSS enabled. It was pretty miserable with FSR, even though it gave a little more performance. In the apartment building, we'd get some light sources that would just start flickering in a way that the game didn't really intend them to, and it would just start geeking in areas, and these issues kind of persisted in the Brookhaven Hospital as well, but just kind of in a different manner, not really the same way as the apartment. At some points throughout the game, walls and objects can just load up late, which is kind of strange considering across a bunch of videos I used to study on game optimization and how Silent Hill 2 was built in general. The reason why it has performance issues is that it's rendering a lot more than it needs to be at a given moment. So sections of the map that are way too far for you to reach or even see are being rendered, which tanks your performance for basically no reason. And these issues were even consistent with setups with 4080s and 4090s at the time. The next issue is a really weird conscious decision by the developers, but cutscenes are locked to 30 FPS, and I don't know if that's because of the way they are recording the cutscenes or the animations tied to them are sitting at that frame rate, but it's just a really jarring decision that I don't believe needs to be the case. It just really throws me off and looks so wrong, especially if your game has been running at a high frame rate and then bam, you're moving at the pace of what feels like a slideshow. But then again, this could be an Unreal Engine 5 thing, because even Claire Obscure Expedition 33 did this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn the video into a gaming is dead and optimization has killed my dog, a billions must optimize sort of ordeal, but when you see this exponential pattern of video game requirements being raised up for the silliest reasons, like draw distance being higher than it needs to be, or keeping floor tiles that you can't really you won't really look at as separate objects, it just makes you want to go on like a tangent and just say like, you know, why couldn't just things be set up to work? I think I had a friend of mine start losing his mind because of the videos I sent him about game optimization, and he just went on a rant in my DMs like, dude, I didn't develop these games, but I get what you're saying, my bad. The runtime of the game is extremely bloated to me as well, with a weird amount of additional puzzles and ambushes. I understand that the point of a Silent Hill game is the plot, and taking time to explore and understand your environment and taking the story is really important, but my playthrough of the game took me around 18 hours, while the original Silent Hill 2 took me 7 hours to beat. And I'm not saying it needs to be 7 hours all over again, maybe 10, 11 hours, but the time to beat makes for a less appealing replay prospect. I feel really conflicted about this because I really do want to feel like replaying a horror game, and I don't really feel like doing that with Silent Hill 2 Remake, and the problem is with the quality of the moment-to-moment combat, especially the melee combat. The shooting feels okay, and the sound effects of the guns are really punchy. It's just, there's a really satisfying set of sounds that go into the weapons, and it just feels good to shoot things in this game. You know, given that this is a horror game, they don't give you all the ammo in the world, you know, this isn't really Resident Evil, the melee combat is like essentially front and center, and they even developed like some dodge mechanics that are kind of Soulsborne-like, with the way that the hitboxes are done and just the path of the attacks and everything. Like, you kind of have to know where these nurses are going to attack or something like that, especially sometimes they could just move really erratically and just throw you off, which is kind of cool, but the movement itself is kind of clunky, even by horror game standards. It's just, like, I know that the combat in Silent Hill 2 wasn't that great to begin with, and you kind of just, you know, bonk things over the head until you're done. But if you're gonna go through this for comfortably over a dozen hours with replays, you know, assuming you get better and better every time, and it's just not that exciting. But a thing that annoys me a lot with the combat in general is just how much they zoom behind James's back when he aims down his sights. This aiming zoom mod that Under the Mayo showcases here fixes this problem in Resident Evil 4.
You might be asking why I'm giving these suggestions to improve the action, but it's because the game leaned in a more action-heavy direction, and if they're gonna do that, they better at least make it more comfortable and just kind of less clunky overall, so, you know.
If they maintain the same distance without zooming and stop the camera swing when your metal pipe, you know, gets swung, it would be a lot more comfortable, and they don't really give you an option to run with just how many or how often they chuck enemies at you. The issue with the camera getting moved around erratically comes with the stomp, especially, and Dead Space Remake avoided that issue by having the camera avoid moving dramatically, because I swear stomping on enemies in Silent Hill 2 Remake feels like James is just wearing the camera on his ankle, which is pretty funny considering Silent Hill F, which is dropping in less than a month at this point, looks like it has a different approach to combat where they put Hinako on Hanavar or something. The big priority to players for replays should be wanting to reach other endings as well, and if the pace of the gameplay slows pretty much everything to a crawl, then it won't encourage repeat playthroughs. Saying the gameplay is close to Resident Evil 2 Remake would just be plain lying at this point. If anything, it's closer to The Last of Us, just a lot slower, and without any of the chances for critical hits or insta-kills through stealth or anything like that. Another thing that got on my nerves was just the sheer amount of mannequin ambushes. I think rather than just having an ambush every other room, these encounters should just be randomized every playthrough to keep you on your toes. Good enough by me?
You felt that in your heart.
Oh my god, you— How the f*** did I see that coming? Oh was just saying there was a clip of me saying this game isn't that scary.
It's got those peaks to it. It's got its moments. These guys are what scare me the most because they appear out of nowhere.
Swear to God.
I
Just
love
pop
them.
out of nowhere, bro.
I was eating some chips and shit, so I'm gonna go wash my hands real quick and be back with you, alright?
Got it. Oh no, I'm stuck. No way.
You broke the game?
They... Alright, so the biggest element of Silent Hill 2 would be the campaign, which has been discussed longer than I've been alive, and the way that it has been acted is just completely changed with a far more cinematic focus. It's not like the original Silent Hill quadrilogy of games just wasn't cinematic in any way. That was more of a focus with how the frames and shots have been done of the game, which are like seared into players' heads at this point. Even players who are like younger than the game itself just remember it very vividly. But this one is a lot more textbook Hollywood. We're gonna act this out and just give really good performances all around, which is not a bad approach, but I still think something is lost in the process, which I'll discuss later. Before I sound like an idiot contradicting myself with what I'm saying, I want to say that I know that the periods in time where these games are developed and even the circumstances under which the teams are working are completely different. With the original Team Silent being a skeleton crew from sinking projects across Konami put together to work on a horror game as a chance to redeem themselves, with all the freedom to experiment. Some key members to highlight were Keiichiro Toyama, the director, Akira Mumura, the producer, Masahiro Ito, the monster/creature designer, Akira Yamaoka, my favorite, who's the composer and sound designer, and Hiroyuki Uwaku, who is the scenario writer. I won't be discussing these developers too deeply, I just wanted to make sure I knew how to pronounce their names. The team had exploited the weakness of the PlayStation 1 at the time by just drowning the game in fog to remove the need to render too many objects at once. This enhanced the game's environment and it made it look even more mysterious, and the fog became iconic. Now the fog is synonymous with Silent Hill, and anybody who sees the fog in real life who's seen the games is like, oh my god, I'm in Silent Hill. Masahiro Ito's creature design would go on to give us some of the most iconic enemies in gaming and horror history, which would include Pyramid Head, the nurses, and the mannequins. Akira Yamaoka was responsible for the soundtrack and sound design in this game, whose work you'd be hearing throughout the video, and he still composes music for the series, with Silent Hill F being his next featured body of work, and I'm really excited for that given how different of a direction it will be taking. His approach to sampling, distorting, and layering real-world sounds instead of writing traditional melodies helped add to the grimy and rusted environments of Silent Hill and the other world, which led to a consistent sense of discomfort on your first playthrough. There's even a video here on YouTube showing you what he sampled and what it led to in terms of what came out of the soundtrack. Alongside this video where Britney Spears and Akira use the same sample. Now moving on to how the Silent Hill 2 remake was created, Konami had commissioned Bloober team, which had essentially put their job application out in the form of Layers of Fear in the medium. Bloober reportedly has 200 or more members on board, and I'm not sure where to confirm this in all honesty, I just kinda read it. One thing a lot of content creators said on YouTube is that the remake is trying to replace the original game, but I don't think that's necessarily true, because the remake does acknowledge the events of the original game with some stuff that you can find around the map. The only problem is that the original game isn't really accessible in today's market. Like, you'd need to go back and buy a PlayStation 2 with a copy on a disc, or play the HD collection for the Xbox 360, but that storefront's been shut down, so Konami hasn't really made it accessible to get hold of the original game. The big focus when it comes to Bloober is a shift to a more cinematic approach, with full-fledged acting sets being put together to recreate the scenes in the original game, with very drastic changes to the delivery of the lines, which crashes the original tone of the game into a river. Guy Seehey's delivery of James' lines while it can be objectively seen as amateurish and stiff, adds to the dreamlike nature of the game and leaves a lot to the imagination of the player early on in the story, with more details given along the way that eventually reveal the twist to the player. The performance to me comes off really detached from what's happening in his surroundings, and he truly comes off like he's got some repressed baggage with some of his little mannerisms and the way some lines are said. But his initial presentation of James is like, he's just happy to be here, man, you know?
No,
Alright,
you're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
No, my late wife. I can't believe it. You could be her twin. Your face, your voice, just your hair and clothes are different.
My name is Maria. I don't look like a ghost, do I?
Luke Roberts' performance, on the other hand, is incredibly well acted. I have practically no complaints about the quality of work that he delivered, and I would even go as far as to say that it's worthy of an award. But the subtlety of the story is lost, especially to players returning to the series after playing the original.
Girlfriend.
Goofy ass rig.
No, my late wife. I can't believe it. Your face, your voice, you could be
My name is Maria.
But I really do appreciate the way that Luke adds little mannerisms to James, and the way that he delivers some lines. You can kind of just see through the cracks, just get a small glimpse of what's going on underneath. It doesn't feel like he's letting on too much, but, you know, as somebody who's already played the story, it feels like, you know, you're just, you know, revealing that curtain, blowing it wide open, and just like quickly closing it. Like, we already know what's happening. At least, you know, old players do, but new players would be completely intrigued by it.
Let go!
Sorry, Laura, but I can't let you just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
Look, just stay with me, okay? This is no place for a kid.
Fine.
Salome Gunnarsdottir's performance in the remake as Maria was impressive too, and the actors responsible for playing Eddie, Scott Haining and Danny Carrain, for the voice and facial capture respectively, helped the character come alive in a way that makes your eyes harder to take off the screen. The only performance I actually have an issue with would be Angela's. I'm not sure what the directors were going with her, but her voice sounded like she was going a Marlon Brando impression, like as the Godfather, with how unclear the words came out sometimes. It's really strange. Her acting is still good in the grand scheme of things, but it's just the way that the voice was done is just weird. All in all, I'm not saying characters have to perform exactly as the original cast, but I wish that they found a way to maintain the subtlety and intrigue in the same way that the fans were familiar from the original game, rather than just making it feel like a movie all the way through. Moving on to the announcement of the Silent Hill 1 remake, a lot of the changes made in Silent Hill 2 could work really well in its favor, given how Silent Hill 2 was a story that relied on subtlety and keeping details about characters concealed until the very end. But Silent Hill 1 plays out in a more event-oriented way, so just to quickly have an on-hand guide, Silent Hill 2 is character-oriented and Silent Hill 1 is more event-oriented, where things happen on a larger scale. This form of presentation could be absolutely golden to shine a light on the environments that Silent Hill 1 has to offer, alongside helping us see a more terrifying, enhanced look at the other world with a rusty look. The game takes place in the dark for a good portion towards the beginning and uses a lot of effects to create a hellish, oppressive environment which I'm just buzzing to be exploring. I personally have a really active imagination, and Silent Hill 3 left me with nightmares for 2 years since I was 5, but seeing what Silent Hill 1 has just has me itching to see it realized in the modern day. Additionally, the over-the-shoulder camera would be incredibly helpful in gameplay and the presentation of the world. A really cool thing that Metal Gear Solid Delta did was it allowed you to flip between modern controls and the classic camera angles, so with that you can take a chance to frame the environments as they were on the PlayStation 1. And then you can adapt the gameplay to shift between perspectives to make it feel more comfortable to use in the context of the remake. Or maybe have specific rooms that wouldn't be too action heavy, that would let the camera do the work and be framed more cinematically. Especially if Bloober's direction is meant to be more cinematic to begin with, since that's what they've done on Silent Hill 2. Why not give us some cinematic in-game framing rather than just having it done through cutscenes? So to move on exactly towards what I want out of Silent Hill 1 whenever that might be releasing, the atmosphere has to be perfect. I have incredibly high hopes for this, as Bloober is not missing the resources to accomplish this, and have shown a dedication towards creating a really good imagining of the original environments. The only problem I have with it is that it feels too polished at times in comparison to how haunting and grimy Silent Hill 2 was. So Silent Hill 1 must be really well taken care of with all its rusted glory. Harry as a character can be given a little more room to shine, and having a good performance behind him to convey him as a father trying to get his daughter back would be incredibly helpful in letting players connect to him. Another character I really want to stress would be Lisa Garland, and this game would be a huge opportunity to explore the events from her perspective. They're willing to have James Sunderland be so well acted, but the story of Lisa could be taken to dizzying new heights given the right actress. Add to that some good direction and a performance that would capture the feel of the original and add the right amount of polish could absolutely nail those memories back into our minds again. Use the fog as a performance enhancing advantage and don't over-render so those frame counts do not tank, as well as using it to maintain the mystique behind the town is also going to be critical, but I don't expect them to forget or skimp out on that. The monster design in the game has a lot of variety, especially with the reptile-looking things in the sewers and the dogs and the flying enemies. I don't know exactly what their names are, my bad. Do not have cutscenes that are 30 frames per second. It throws me off really badly, and if the cutscenes are going to be an engine, I just say let the frame rate do its thing. There could be a chance to create some new music for the game that isn't a remake of the original OST, and maybe some vocal tracks like we got in Silent Hill 3 and 4, since Silent Hill 1 is like the closest one that we have that could actually get vocal tracks, I think. The character designs for the game should also try to line up with the original, and in essence I'm also saying don't butcher Sybil's look. Don't have a crazy amount of exposition and explain exactly what's happening. Leave room for the curiosity of the player to do some of the work, and environmental storytelling would leave clues sprawl across the map that force the player to keep looking. And don't rely on too many notes in the environment to tell stories, just make scenes, take your time. I'd also like a lot of care to be placed into setting up the story for Silent Hill 3 through having us be invested in the events that happen in Silent Hill 1, but also not treating this game as just a setup for Silent Hill 3. My concern for this comes in the place of how they blatantly reference Silent Hill 3 before allowing us to hear anything about the first game. Additionally, the game shouldn't be afraid to have fun with its cosmetics, giving us options for alternate outfits to play with, like choosing the original PlayStation 1 model with low polygons, or even switching the enemies to have those PS1 models as well could be really fun. I personally didn't like the options they gave in Silent Hill 2 Remake where it's just these masks, and having the original soundtrack be accessible gives a flavor of the original game's atmosphere, and helping it make a return could be helpful too. Just maybe don't sell it as DLC, The Resident Evil remakes gave us plenty of options to explore, and replaying the games was always fun since they offered different game modes. The variety in costumes across both Claire and Leon and Chris and Jill is impressive, with even outfits across different games, and even the scrapped version of Resident Evil 2 where we were set to play as Elsa Walker. Stuff like that offers an insight into the almost 30-year-long history of the franchise, and it could spark curiosity from players wanting to look further into the series. I like how visceral the combat feels initially, but if the campaign is going to run for almost some 20 hours, some variety needs to be introduced in how encounters are done. The sound design, especially with the gunshot sounds they chose, are really well done, and the attention to detail that they paid in Silent Hill 2 was really impressive. Things that show James' experience with weapons include being startled when he first fires a pistol or accidentally misfiring out of the player's control. That's just really cool stuff in my opinion. Another thing I'm excited for is the potential for boss fights to be fun. With modern controls being added into the mix, bosses in the game can try running into, and maybe a sidestep can be introduced as you gradually become more experienced in combat. These upgrades shouldn't be obvious or make Harry feel like a Resident Evil character where everything can just be roundhouse kicked into oblivion, and the few examples of this would be having the aim sway or the recoil just be reduced, or if they're really willing to get imaginative, having a chance for weapons to jam on you and forcing you to reset them, with resets getting shorter over time the more you get experienced in the game. Silent Hill is a psychological horror game first and foremost, not a survival horror, so inventory management shouldn't really be a thing because Harry's inventory is like an infinite void, and these combat suggestions I'm giving are kind of crazy in all honesty, so they might not get implemented, but I think they'll help the game feel more alive in my opinion. That's just something I would like done out of the game. Another issue I have with the remake is just how lean it is on content. If Bloober is going to charge us $70 for the game, why didn't they speak on plans to include the one from the
real DLC or something? You're not gonna believe.
Having different perspectives be playable could expand more on the world. For the purposes of Silent Hill 1, playing through some of what Sybil has been through could be incredibly fun given that she is a police officer and could have a different perspective on how she takes on threats, maybe through having her be quicker on the draw when it comes to using weapons, or giving her different movement options to evade attacks. And the challenge could be how she navigates without a radio, if they make it a more vital feature to warn her of any monsters nearby. I'm establishing this point here so I can make it a common point when I continue making videos regarding remakes, but the golden standard to me when it comes to remakes is Resident Evil 1 2002. To me, that game is perfect and sits among my top 5 games of all time, and it hangs very close to the top, and if not, it's the first. Resident Evil 1 was a realization of everything the developers wanted to accomplish out of the original 1996 release, and that's what a remake should do, with the dramatic technical jump from the PS1 to the GameCube initially, and eventually to the PC. I was not around for the GameCube. And now with Silent Hill's jump from PS1 to PC and PS5, you're guaranteed to have a revolutionary change in how the game is seen, but you can't exclusively rely on graphical fidelity or fancy cinematics to carry the game. That said, it's important to find a good balance between knowing when to flex the visual muscles of the game, but letting the player almost exist in the cutscene. This is where I implore the developers to have fixed camera angles to help them really take the environment in, and giving the game a visual charm other than everything just being over the shoulder. This is completely possible for the remake for Resident Evil 2, as it had a mod for a fixed camera and the gameplay is adjusted to be functional, showcased here in this video by Under the Mayo again. This isn't my footage, so I'll be crediting videos that aren't mine of course, but here's a few snippets of the mod so you can see it in action. It might seem like I'm asking for Resident Evil 1 all over again, but I'm not. What I'm asking for is to bring back some of the presentation elements that Silent Hill 1 had without compromising too much on what Bloober hopes to accomplish, in addition to fixing a lot of the technical issues that ship to Silent Hill 2. I also do want to take a moment to acknowledge Chronos The New Dawn, which acts as a spiritual successor to Dead Space from what I'm seeing. Bloober is clearly capable beyond releasing productions that aren't just psychological horror, and their venture into action horror games can also provide them with a blueprint of what they need to keep and remove to make the gameplay of Silent Hill 1 avoid empowering the player too much with just the right amount of progression and what Harry can do throughout the story. I do want to say that the helmet looks kind of funny to me though. I haven't gone around to playing it just yet, but I will when my schedule clears up within time. I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. Going back to Silent Hill 1, I'm really hoping that Bloober can come back and deliver a project that can elevate the game to new heights that the narrative of Silent Hill 2 was known for. But I feel like there are many pitfalls that they can miss here, and I tried to give some feedback that would help maintaining the original feeling of the Team Silent games. I'm honestly enthusiastic about the prospect for a remake of each of the games, and it makes sense why they started with remaking Silent Hill 2. It's simply down to just how popular the game has become over the years and the fact that it doesn't directly connect with any of the other games, acting as its own story where you won't be confused on any elements from previous games. If Bloober wanted to make another remake that would act as a standalone, they could have went for Silent Hill 4, but that's a very unorthodox game by any standard, and I'd prefer they'd gain some more experience with the franchise before they tackle that. Silent Hill 1 and 3 are directly connected to one another as sequels, and that has the most potential to be successful in the long run. With all that being said, I don't want to talk your ear off longer than I need to, but if you are a new fan of the franchise, I implore you to play the older games to have an idea of what the original feel of them was, to gain a sense of what you think the remake should be like.
Trigger warning! Trigger warning! This is Ghazi's opinion. Play Silent Hill 2. You could legally take it off of the game disc. It's better than the original. I mean, better than the remake.
One more thing I really like is that Bloober has released Silent Hill 2 Remake and Chronos The New Dawn on GOG, which has become my favorite platform because of its DRM-free approach of game distribution. This means that every copy of the games you play is truly yours and you get access to the backup installers of the game. This is as strangely close as you can get to owning a physical copy of the game, and I really do enjoy things like this. With more measures today being put against digital purchases to ensure that you practically own as little as possible, I love customer-friendly stuff like this. GOG is an incredibly slept-on platform, and if you care about game ownership, preservation, and all that stuff, check if a game you want is being sold on there. It's a game changer on all those fronts. I want to reiterate on my message on how I feel like gaming is still good, but there are roadblocks that we need to get around to actually be able to enjoy games as a whole. And with our lives becoming seemingly more hectic, we can't really afford to waste our time doing stuff that just puts us in a slump in terms of not knowing what to do with our spare time, or just makes us plain unhappy to get on a game. So taking time to rediscover an old title or trying something you wouldn't have considered could feel really refreshing. Thank you for sticking around and listening until the end of the video. I really appreciate you giving me the time to ramble on about stuff I like. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. I also need to give a special thank you and credit to Silenthaven. This guy does not know me at all, but I've used a lot of his work throughout the video because he makes just really good Silent Hill themed music, and good mixes of music you'd know, and he puts it with Silent Hill and stuff like that. It's just really awesome stuff. It's super creative. Definitely go check him out. He'll be linked in the video. Thank you again.